So this particular session is about how companies like Deloitte and Tech Mahindra and Freshwork are driving organization-wide digital transformation. And for that discussion, we have with us today Ravi Mehta. He's a partner with Deloitte India. Ravi will also be moderating the session. Ravi, in his role at Deloitte, crafts Deloitte's global strategy and positioning. And second speaker with us today is Prasad Ramakrishnan. He's the Chief Information Officer and Chief Information Security Officer at Freshworks, and he's responsible for the IT vision and strategy of the company and its execution. Our third speaker is Jagdish Mitra. He's the Chief Strategy Officer and Head of Growth at Tech Mahindra. He leads the global agenda of business growth driven by strategy and powered by digital and manifested in brand experiences. So over to you, Ravi. Let's start the discussion without wasting any more time.
Thank you so much, Shipra. Thank you so much. This is really good, and what a topic, And as I start, I just wanted to set a context for a minute or so. What a year this has been thus far. In the next few days, we'll bid adieu to one of the most momentous years in the known history. Till now, 2020 for us was only a term that reminded us of the most famous religion of India, which is cricket. However, going forward, 2020 will most likely be known as a year when the word, strong and powerful words like unprecedented became quite commonplace due to the sheer magnitude of events, we got exposed to. While the global pandemic forced us to figuratively move physically inside the box, it also forced us to literally think outside the box, dig deeper and push harder. As the proverbial new normal becomes more normal, the contours of most industries will change significantly. And many companies will try and are trying to figure out unique ways of trying to do things that will help them improve their competitive positioning in the global marketplace. Many companies are trying very different things, different strategies, but there is one common underlying theme that binds them all. And that is around what I call as digitization, automation, and innovation. Uh, you look at anything that most companies are trying to do, they're trying to figure out how to digitize, how to automate, and how to innovate. Uh, there was always a time to innovate and digitize, but there has been no better time to do this than now. We are forced to do that. Uh, but when we start looking at, are many companies able to do it successfully? When we look at the data, it seems that that is not the case. And I'll give you some insights from the survey that Deloitte did recently. We have been running the survey for last few years, and it focuses on more on the automation and innovation side. And we asked companies, around 500 companies globally, uh, how many of them have been successful in this? And the answer started with lower teens, and it has gone to a slightly higher number. But still, around 15 to 17% companies really report that they have been able to achieve enterprise-wide automation digitization. Uh, it seems like it is very required. Everybody wants to do it, but looks like it is really difficult to do it. So what I wanted to do was to ask our eminent panelists, Jagdish and Prasad, their views on one, do they agree with this, that there has been no better time to digitize? It is required, and everybody wants to do it and trying to do it, and yet not many companies are able to be successful. If they agree, then what are the reasons for that? Jagdish, let me start with you. Jagdish, we are not able to hear you actually. There you go.
Sorry,
Yeah.
one part of the whole global digitization program is to teach some of us in technology business how to operate a
Unmute.
webinar. Because this probably is the most common term people use as someone starts.
Apart from am I audible?
So,
There you go.
so thank you, Ravi. Thank you, organizers of Entrepreneur, that great opportunity to talk about and great to connect absolutely across the world. Couldn't have been more distant than now between California and here, and this can only possible. I don't think we should credit COVID so much about it, but the impact of it in terms of being able to do some of these things. So to answer your question, yeah, I don't think anyone can, there are these famous adages that have happened where Winston Churchill has said about never let a good crisis go by. And I think that's been used and people have talked about it. But from a digital transformation perspective, actually, this is absolutely the right time, rather a wake up call, I think, more than the right time. It's a wake up call for most businesses, including people who are providing solutions like TechM and so on and so forth, versus people who are consuming these, our customers, these enterprises. That this is probably not just the better time or the best time, but this is probably the last time.
Oh, that's interesting.
If
Very
the
well said.
transformation happen now, then you will be very seriously left behind, as the last 6 months have shown us, right? When you look at data for companies, whether it's the FT 100 or that have succeeded, or the Forbes list of companies that have succeeded, you will soon come up to a conclusion saying that the ones that have succeeded are the ones that were ready for this before the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this will now become absolutely the normal. And that's why if you don't do it now, it's not the better time. This is the only time.
And Jagdish, just a quick follow up on that, and Prashad, I'll come to you after that. I completely agree. This time is now, and I love the way you said probably this is the last for most of the companies, if they have not already done it. Have you seen a lot of companies being successful? And if yes, what are those reasons? And if not, what are those reasons?
A lot of the companies successful
In
by
implementing digital transformation across the enterprise.
like any other transformation journey, because I think we probably have to break it into two blocks. One is digitization and one is digitalization. Two parts of it. And I think the digitization part was easily accomplished by a lot of people, which is really system of records and so on and so forth. And that's probably not easy, but it has a process to it, and it has systems to it. Digitalization actually requires a much bigger play because it actually means you're changing processes, and most importantly, you're changing the culture.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore there are enough and plenty examples of people that didn't succeed
Mm-hmm.
and examples of succeed. But if I were to take a ratio, then I think a lot of people are probably in the not succeed area versus the people in the succeed area. And we will dig into that as to why and what we will learn in the process, because I don't think anyone had a um, silver bullet to this when this
Yeah,
process.
yeah. I think everybody is learning along the way. No, absolutely. Thank you, Jagdish. Prasad, what are your initial thoughts on this very important topic?
Yeah, so I think what this COVID situation accelerated for most people, and I completely agree with what Jagdish is saying and the way you also described it, Ravi, is most people were on a path to becoming digital, right? And putting more and more assets on the cloud. Most companies, and if you read the SaaS reports and reports coming out of the industry, right, most companies said that more than 95% of their assets are going to be completely cloud based or SaaS based by 2023, 2024. So companies were gradually doing that, where they were moving assets from their traditional business model to more of a SaaS based business model. What COVID did was pretty much accelerated that entire journey and made people do it all in a matter of a few weeks or few months, right? So there was a mad scramble. So it was, and that's going to become the new normal. So the good news now is what would have normally taken from a business disruption and an industry disruption perspective, possibly 3, 4 years, that disruption has happened where people, through hook or crook, they have somehow adopted what they needed to adopt without truly doing a complete adoption from an internal process perspective. They have possibly put the tools in place to actually enable them to continue functioning. But when it comes to the second part of your question, in terms of are they successful or not, it's not just about the technology. It's about the complete implementation of the end-to-end process, and then making sure that you're doing true digital transformation. Um, the best example I can give you is when you talk about digital transformation, most people think it is actually a project where I'm going to do a digital transformation project It's going to start on this date and finish on this date, and then I'm done. But the reality is it's not a project. It's something very similar to, have you played the game Temple Run? I play the game once in a while with my kids here, right? So Temple Run is where you keep going from level to level and you keep
Yeah.
on running. You come up with stumbling blocks, you jump through those blocks, you take your turns, and then you learn from that. And then once you make a mistake, you come back and then you again do the same thing, cross
Yeah.
level 1, level 2, level 3. Digital transformation is exactly like that, right? Where you're going to
Very well
try
said.
some things, you're going to try some things are going to work, things are not going to work, and then you learn from the things that did not work, and then go to the next level, and then go to the next level, and then finally reach the magic goal, right? So I think that's a way to look at digital transformation, Ravi.
Well, fantastic, and what an example of Temple Run brings it home actually. And when you're working from home a lot, that actually means something, isn't it? So let me just extend that question, Prasad. You are part of a very fast evolving company, a very successful company. Uh, how have you started on that journey of digitally transforming yourself? There are a lot of entrepreneurs on this call. I think they'll benefit from hearing your perspective on what you just talked about, saying that it's not a defined race. If I paraphrase it, this is something that you have to learn and evolve and experiment, and that cycle of experiment, observe, learn, and evolve needs to continue till the time you become better. How has Freshworks done it?
Yeah, so maybe I can give a little bit of history about the company, right? If you look at the origins of Freshworks, we started 10 years ago. In fact, we just finished our 10th anniversary. We started with one product, working out of one location, and very soon the market expanded, and then we started opening up offices all over the world. Started our second product, and then now we have a rich portfolio of around 12 to 13 products. And our founder and CEO Girish keeps saying the story. He was challenged by somebody saying, "You cannot start a tech unicorn based out of India." He said, "No, I'll disprove that. I'll come and set up an entire operation out of India." So look up freshworks.com and you'll get to know the Girish story, right? So if you look at our journey, right from our product strategy to our internal system strategy to our internal processes, we have been learning along the way. If you look at the way that the company has grown from a very humble beginning 10 years back, we now are 12 products, 14 different countries, operate out of 14 different countries. We have 3,600 employees working throughout the world, right? So what typically doesn't catch up is the processes for running the business efficiently, right?
That's true.
When you experience such a rapid growth, what happens is the products come out, our market opportunity and the sales happen, but the internal systems to keep up with all of these normally are the lagging factors, right? So we learned from that, and we constantly keep refining our entire internal business process. And one of the things we do to do that is we focus on what is called as not just the technology experience, but the employee business experience, the employee digital experience, right? So here's where we said, given that we have an extremely distributed workforce, out of the 3,500 people, we have a lot of people in our operations in India, in Chennai and Bangalore and Hyderabad, but we have a decent amount of people in our San Mateo headquarters as well as in our operations in Europe. Now we want to make it where the employee who's going from facility to facility should not have a different experience. When they are now going from point A to point B, it should feel to them that they are in a Freshworks office, right? So focusing on their digital experience, as far as their onboarding is concerned, as far as their travel is concerned, as far as the way they access business services. So we learned along the way. Initially, things were not automated. Things were not easy for employees to use. But one of the things we are focusing on and are continuing to do that is to make sure that we are focusing and taking the persona of the employee and then designing processes and systems around the employee digital experience. So that was a key learning. The initial mistake was to do it based on the technology, but then we started pivoting more towards the employee digital experience.
Fantastic. And what I'll do is I'll keep summarizing few nuggets as we go along, what we hear from Prasad and Jagdish. And it seems one of the things, Prasad, you mentioned earlier was around, that whole cycle of, experiment, observe, learn, evolve, and then continue to refine that. And what you mentioned now was more around, how do you kind of pivot it from not trying to implement a technology, but trying to figure out this problem that you're trying to solve for. And it again, the element of observation plays a role. and how deeply you're able to observe and define a problem makes it really, really important, right? So now I completely appreciate that. Jagdish, let me ask you one quick question. You mentioned earlier that, you'll have more companies in the not so successful bucket rather than in a very successful bucket. You are the, you're the chief strategy officer of one of the largest tech companies in India. What role do you think companies like yours can play in helping move more companies from the not so successful bucket to a more successful bucket going forward? And considering how important it is for the companies to do it.
So I forgot to mention to you that all the successful ones were all Tech Mahindra
Yeah,
customers.
of course. There you go.
Nice plug there, Jagdish.
Yeah, this is like the ad within the app. It doesn't. There you
Very.
go.
So the point is, Ravi, I think we have a big role to play. We
Yeah.
have a very big role to play. But I think the role is also of it's like, when people say, and you learn when you have children and when you have engagements outside and at home, that how important is classwork and how important is homework, right? So
Mm-hmm.
from that perspective, both of them are important.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to do, from a company perspective, a Tech Mahindra or an IT consulting company or a consulting company like yours, Deloitte, would come in and tell people, and similarly Freshworks or any other, would help people and enable them with either processes, tools, and technologies that can enable that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you step back and see what are the key things that make a digital transformation successful,
Mm-hmm.
technology to me is one third of it. Okay. The
Mm-hmm.
rest of the 2 points that make the technology successful
Mm-hmm.
are actually things that typically you can't bring in through the help of technology or tools or frameworks, whatever. They are. So, first is obviously we can enable and play a big role in identifying each of these three roles. And the three big areas being, what are the digital processes that you are trying to digitize and digitalize?
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to probably have a very clear objective in what it will deliver. And so it's better to do that and do it upfront and prioritize that these ones will have bigger impact, these ones are to be done, so that let's focus on those. Second is a very serious buy-in, and by buy-in I mean ownership, incentives, KRAs, all of them aligned for the leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
In that, if they have to make sure it happens, they need to make sure that they are aligned to the joint success of it, and it's not another project.
Mm-hmm.
And the third most important part of it is managing the change, which is change.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're doing it with a bank or whether you're doing it with a retail company or a manufacturing sector, everyone's lives will change
Mm-hmm.
as digitalization gets implemented. And we've seen that, right? In the post-COVID world, the ones you asked me a question about this, and the ones that have successfully done it are the ones who probably had a very good digital supply chain in place. Ones that who've probably been able to manage their payments digitally, the ones who've probably been able to make sure that their brand gets to be told digitally. So each of those guys have already had digital processes in place and they were able to take that. But it also means that the skills of the people that are they doing the job, because the organizations are running, right? It's not that you suddenly today decide you're going to create a start from zero. There are digitally native, but most of the business still gets run from organizations that are already existing
That's
and
true.
they're offering these services. So those guys, the people, the employees, the associates in those will go through massive change. And that massive change, if it is not done in terms of cultural change, in terms of how to handle the process, and in terms of the skills needed in order to be able to get that delivered, the success of those programs will be very much. So we have a very big role. But I said classwork and homework because the first part is classwork, which a company like Tech Mahindra can do very well. The second part is homework, which the company like Tech Mahindra and other such companies can facilitate and help with frameworks. The third one is also homework, because we can facilitate, we can define, we can enable an outside view, but
Hmm.
it has to have a very strong ownership at the home level, at the organization.
Completely makes sense, Jagdish. Let me just ask you a quick follow-up. Yeah, and change management is something that I have been always fascinated about. I tend to read a lot, and I read from ancient, texts, be it of Hindu religion or Jain, Buddhism, whatnot. And I also read a lot about quantum physics. So my span of reading is like one end of extreme to another. And change management I've always been fascinated about. Yet, one of the things I learned in this year, 2020, it actually showed us the worst of humanity and the best of humanity.
Hmm.
It showed us the best of humanity because it told us that when we are pushed to the corner, we are able to bring 6 million years of evolution to bear and do something which was completely unthinkable. So, if people would have told that you would discover a vaccine in less than a year, last year, we would have laughed it off. And yet we are on the verge of doing it. In fact, UK is going to actually start the program of running it. Jagdish, do you, and like you said, right? I mean, change management is probably one of the biggest pillars of the digital implementation enterprise wide. Do you think the experience we got, the learning that we had about ourselves, that was always there but was not exposed, and this pandemic in a very ironical manner brought it to the fore? Do you think now we are better placed to leverage that skill to actually implement digital at scale and with speed in organizations?
Oh, absolutely. We have a format in TechM which we call as DigiMat, basically digital maturity assessment model. It does that. And we've called this whole journey from the time it started in February, or it started earlier, but started hitting us in February to now, is the process of from survive to thrive process, right? So the first reactions were how to survive. You
Hmm.
know, let's get our business continuity planning going. Let's make sure we have secure data. We are working from home. Blah 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 blah, and obviously employee safety or associate safety that every organization went through. And then there was a period around June-ish or so, people started looking at it and saying, hey, listen, this is not going away in 2 months.
Hmm.
Okay. It hasn't. Rather, it's peaking. And as you just heard from Prasad, it's peaking again. So
Hmm.
it's not going away, and it's probably uh, one, and it hopefully for the sake of humanity and for all our livelihoods, the vaccines will start to work and it will be easily accessible. And so we'll probably be off this crisis for sooner than later. But it also taught us that the ability for us to be able to live with it and be able to then transact has to be figured out, has to be worked. And so people and companies started working at saying that, what kind of changes do I need to make my process? What kind of solutions do I need to bring together? And we were lucky that way that in this period, we actually got the highest ever business pipeline in the last 5 years.
Wow.
This
And
pipeline.
congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it all depends on how much we convert. But frankly speaking, is that the pipeline was not an indication of anything else, but the fact that people started looking at it and saying, "I want to get this done." So there was a
Agreed.
I'm
Agreed.
sure they're discussing with me and my peers as well. But the point I'm trying to make is the need for change has never been felt more like what it is now, right? So this, for from a perspective for us, is all that more important as I started the conversation with you, is that if you don't change now, you're going to be left behind. So what we learned in the last 6 to 7 months, 8 months, that all the functions that we thought were either, not were good to have, but not necessary to have. Why should I change this process? Why should I look at a virtual store when my retail store is doing well?
Hmm.
Those questions got answered
Automatically.
automatically. And that
Exactly.
question got answered very hard on you saying that, boss, we have to make sure this is what it is going to work because people's behavior has changed.
Yep.
Therefore, if
And
they
it's
want,
also a question of survival, right?
it's a
It
question of
became a
survival.
question of survival. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, Prasad. So as survival and behavior, both of these things changed, people recognize the fact that there is no other way but to be able to latch on to something that you are planning 3 years from now has to
You have
be
to do
done.
it now. You have to done now. Absolutely, absolutely, Jagdish. Prasad, what is your sense? Has the experience of how we handle the pandemic, um, can that help in companies, implementing digital at scale with speed in a much better way than they have been able to do so far?
Yeah, so I think to expand on the thought which Jagdish has just spoken about, right? Most companies, small or big, have some kind of a BCP or a disaster recovery plan, right? They have some form of, and most people, what they did, and me included, you start off with a template. You
Mm-hmm.
start off with the standard template, which you go to Google, get the
Mm-hmm.
template, or go into Science Institute, get a template, and then change a few things to make it pass your audit, right? And that's a mistake which many people should not be making, right?
Mm-hmm.
The BCP is like your pant and your shirt. It is
Mm-hmm.
very personal to that particular company, right?
Mm-hmm.
What this COVID situation taught us is there is no such thing as go with the standard template and then adopt it to your business.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand your business. What
Mm-hmm.
are the drivers of your business?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that you want to engage in with your customer?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do to engage with your employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think one key learning which people would have realized in the last few months is
Mm-hmm.
that while the template based approach allowed them to at least get going,
Yeah.
the process inefficiencies that it may have resulted in is the
Mm-hmm.
learning that people should take to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that they continue to refine on what they have already built and
Mm-hmm.
gone digital, right?
Mm-hmm.
So uh, uh, if you don't do that learning, then you
Mm-hmm.
end up being the temple run going to level one and keep coming back, right?
Keep coming
So
back. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And Jagdish, what do you think the entrepreneur community can help in helping companies, drive digital transformation at scale with speed? We heard Jagdish talk about what companies like TechM can do. Uh, what role can entrepreneurs play in driving this?
This is a question to me or to
To
Prasad?
Prasad, to Prasad.
okay, yeah. So if you look at uh, if you look at the tech ecosystem, and here I'm specifically talking about India because I think your question relates to that, right, Ravi?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if you look at the tech ecosystem in India over the last 20, 30 years, from being what was perceived as a low-cost destination to do QA work or contextual work,
Mm-hmm.
India has now become a startup powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the number of powerhouses
Mm-hmm.
that are coming out of India, tech startups, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are giving all the big boys
Mm-hmm.
in the US and Europe a run for their money, right? So I think the entrepreneurs should realize that the type of talent that we have in India
Mm-hmm.
is in some cases far superior to what you see in other countries, right? And we have the advantage of the ability to now scale and then build up large high performing teams in India. So that I think is the key learning. One of the concepts that we use to describe this is what we call as our concept of democratic design. If you have
Mm-hmm.
read the IKEA story, right?
Mm-hmm.
They came up with this concept of simplicity and democratic design.
Mm-hmm.
And at Freshworks, we use this concept called Indian democratic design. Because if you look at how the entrepreneurs can play a role in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the way they build products,
Mm-hmm.
if you take the simple concepts such as simplicity, you want to
Mm-hmm.
build products that are simple to use. You
Agreed.
want to you want to build some kind of self-reliance where you make it where you do not need to have an army of consultants.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Jagdish, no offense to you, but you don't need an army of consultants to actually implement the software. Make it where the software is easy for the end user to use.
Mm-hmm.
It should be scalable, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are looking at a market such as India, where we have a
Mm-hmm.
large number of people, you can test and make sure that you are getting the scale built into your product.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that it demonstrates what we call as craftsmanship,
Mm-hmm.
where it allows you to now put your stamp against it. Are you proud to put your name against it? Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
put your logo against this? And
Mm-hmm.
last but not the least, make sure it is affordable. It is
Mm-hmm.
reachable to everybody else, right? So this is where entrepreneurs, as they are building products, they need to start thinking about how do you make and leverage some of the concepts of what the Indian market and the Indian democratic concepts bring to the market. Use that in your entire product development ecosystem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are some things that we actually found and found it resonates with a lot of people when we talk about these concepts.
Excellent, excellent, Prasad. Let me just pose this to both of you, and probably I'll start with you, Jagdish. I asked you earlier about what role a company like Tech Mahindra can play, and then Prasad asked you what role an entrepreneur can play. But we remember we started with this that look, there is no better time than now, but yet it is very hard to do. And it seems, and Jagdish, you kind of alluded to that earlier, that look, there are multiple things that need to come together to really make digital transformation at scale with speed really work. So the question now to both of you, and Jagdish, I'll start with you, is that is it even feasible for one type of company to make it work? Or does it make sense for an ecosystem of companies to come together and make it work? So, for example, somebody like a TechM, somebody like a Freshworks, maybe somebody like a Deloitte and maybe the client, working together. And the reason I'm asking is that I think one of the things that I learned from this whole last few months is that it is our ability to adapt, and quickly and, manage networks that really, really create much more value than what somebody like I can do individually. And that applies to company as well. So, Jagdish, the question to you is, do you see a role for different types of companies, very established, large global company like you, an entrepreneur starting in India, coming together and helping companies accelerate their digital transformation?
Oh, 100%, Ravi. I think this is a task which probably requires more than a few to come together. And as I said, so you need an innovation ecosystem which is fueling new things, new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I, and I and I think we've realized that in every industry today, there are beacons of success. So uh, the the whole the beacons of success meaning, if you look at your industry, you will find two or three examples whether we can actually find out people who have actually implemented digitization
Mm-hmm.
successfully. So one is to make sure that you are at least at the benchmark.
Mm-hmm.
You have to compete with these guys in the market, so you better have at least those service offerings in place.
Mm-hmm.
Second is, how do you differentiate in this, and how do you make sure that you are able to bring together a set of service offerings that allow you to leapfrog. The whole discussion here is that when you bring this together, we looked at certain skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
Significant amount of change management, people management skills.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a separate set of people for that.
Mm-hmm.
You need a skills and team for that.
Mm-hmm.
You need a set of people who will probably going to strategize and help you construct what your future is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there are specialized set of companies,
Mm-hmm.
you know, people like yourselves and so forth who are probably going to be. Then there's a set of people who are sort of redefining the new process,
Agreed.
fresh works,
Mm-hmm.
and things like other such
Mm-hmm.
enterprise business companies that are there in place who are not improving, because digitalization would have failed if you were doing a linear improvement to this.
Agreed. Good point.
Hmm.
If you're not doing a radical change to the way we are trying to adopt it, then you're only making a little delta here and there, which
Mm-hmm.
is good, but it is not going to make you top of the heap in terms of competing.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer to your question, yes, you need all sorts of people. You need people and companies which can do people management. You need people who can help you with strategy.
Mm-hmm.
You can help people who will help you draw up your roadmap for where the future will be. You need people who will help you with your innovation experiments, and those who can probably enable you to try out new things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it does take a village, and I
Yeah.
think it will probably be a composition of all these five or six people, including the customer at the center.
Exactly. Exactly.
All those, all I'm calling customer, but whatever we want to call it, the
Mm-hmm.
organization.
Mm-hmm.
If they are at the center, then we are, and the world has changed to a large extent, Ravi, which we are finding that do not expect customers should not expect all answers to come from us.
Agreed.
Don't have
Agreed.
answers, and we should not expect that the customer doesn't know much.
Exactly.
So the whole world is changing towards co-developing, co-creation, and so on and so forth. It's true. We sit down and say, hey, listen, this is how the problem is going to be solved. We think some experiences are like this.
Mm-hmm.
Your nuances could be very different.
Yep. Yep.
And so how do we work that together? So,
Yep.
it does require a complete ecosystem. And when when people work in ecosystems together, it start to develop that, that we are a team together. And we've done this as a team together in this place. We want to take that team and do it in another place. I think that's where the future will start to come. It's almost like movie making.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Great
People
example.
people come together and then have a, I mean, not in the non-corporate world or even in the corporate world of movie making. You have a music guy, you have an art guy, you have director who's kind of orchestrating all of that. You have a producer, and then you have a set of multiple set of people who are brought together, come together, finish a project, get it successfully done, and go their own. But you will see those teams trying to come together over and over again. That's where I
And
think it will be.
excellent, Jagdish. Great answer. And maybe I'll just extend that to Prasad. And I'll use the term you use, Prasad, craftsmanship. And I think, Jagdish, you're referring to that. Like, people with deep skills and expertise coming together dynamically for a period of time, getting things done and moving on to something different, right? Which is very different from the way we work today. It is a very hierarchical, although people will say it is not hierarchical in a lot of places, it is still hierarchical. Decision making is slow. It's a very well defined path. How do you, Prasad, to you, question is to you. One, what is your response to the question I asked to Jagdish about, is there a role for, different types of companies to come together? And then an add-on question is, in that scenario, do you think there is a new role for somebody to orchestrate it? Again, to use the word, Jagdish mentioned, and it seems to me, from the vantage point I look at, is that that is a role that is very precious, but also a role for which a lot of people have not been trained so far. So you need a very high level of emotional and mental agility. And it also stretches the definition of inclusion and diversity to a very different level, where it's not based on gender, it's actually also based on the diversity of thoughts that you bring and your ability to process it. Prasad, over to you. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on
no,
that?
no, I think it's a great topic you're asking about, right? And to, to borrow a phrase that Jagdish used, it takes a village, right? And if you go back to the origins of how software innovation used to happen previously, we used to write code from scratch. We used to write volumes and volumes of C or C++ or Java code. Look at the way things are being done now. um, we have open source code, reusable libraries, and it's about now bringing the appropriate libraries together to build a product, which is what most product companies do, right? You want to bring the appropriate libraries. Very similar to that, from a business process perspective, you have pockets of expertise in other places. You want to make sure you're leveraging the pockets of expertise in your ecosystem, either the peers in your industry or from the industry experts, so that you're now able to accelerate your time to market. You do not want to be the slow horse here.
Mhm,
You want to make sure that you are bringing value to the market as fast as possible. And here's where the whole ecosystem of partners is super critical, right? There'll be some who will be experts in business process
mhm,
definition, some who will be experts in product, like we bring products to the market which are employee centric and customer centric, right? Then there are people who are excellent at implementation of these, right? So you
mhm,
need an ecosystem of these to come together so that you get a faster advantage in terms of your time to market. So it's more important now than ever before, especially if you look at the theories about now the world being flat, right? You're not just operating in the market that you are situated in. You are operating in a global marketplace. There are companies which have developers from all over the world collaborating
world, yeah.
and working together. You have process experts from other regions coming and helping you from a tax jurisdiction perspective and other such things to make sure that your business is able to respond to what the market is looking for. So, absolutely critical, especially in this day and age. And what COVID has done for us now is it's flattened the world even more and has
Further,
enabled
yeah.
us now to do all of these things using Zoom and other such methods.
Agree. And the word agility comes to mind, right? And we talk about a lot about agile. And Jagdish, maybe I'll take another example. And I've been in operation theaters more time than I thought I will be by this time in my life. And I realized that's the most agile place. You have 15, 20 people working in a rhythmic manner, making things possible. And it seems, with the ecosystem play that we talked about, where entrepreneurs, established companies, different types of companies can bring dynamic skills together. Will help actually companies to digitally implement transformation at scale with speed. Let me ask you one last question, and then I have a few questions from the panel. Maybe Jagdish, I'll start with you. We talked about what companies should do. What is the one thing they shouldn't do as they go on this journey? And then Prasad, to you as well, the same question. Jagdish, I think, yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
there you go.
One thing that there's a list of things that they shouldn't do, but one thing that they shouldn't definitely do, not choose the right process to digitalize. I mean, that's what you need to spend more time on. If you choose the wrong one, then you'll get the wrong result, and you will never be able to convince the stakeholders that why the company should move in that direction. So it's like, from an anecdotal perspective, the first step out defines almost whether you've actually taken the right step in the right direction. One thing that they shouldn't do is to follow because others have done it. That's the one thing that you definitely don't do, because your business, even in the same industry, could be very different. Your processes and your structure could be very different. So yes, do take a leaf out of their book by saying these guys who are my competition have done it well, and they've done these things. But unless you decide it for yourself and you copy it, it is not going to be successful. So my only reaction to this whole model will be, please don't copy, because the copy ones don't work in the longer run, because you haven't done it because your business needed it. So inspired by them, absolutely, but not copied
Yeah.
from in the same industry.
Very good. I mean, kind of have a bit of courage to look at what is good for you
Yeah,
rather than
because
trying to just go for
when
others.
you
Yeah.
encourage, because people sometimes do it in a slightly, speed takes over the actual outcome. That, six people have done it,
Fair.
I'm falling behind. Let me do it quickly. There is no
Fair.
such
Got it.
answer
Got it.
doing it quickly by copy paste. It's an answer
Got
that you'll have to get and find out for yourself and your organization. It's better that you go through the journey, because you will ask the questions of your associates, your operations folks will ask that question, and you will be then prepared to answer why you are doing it.
What's in it for me? Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. Jagdish. Yeah, good point. Prasad, any last word from you on that? And then I have two, three good questions from the audience as well.
Yeah, so I think most companies use some form of metrics to measure how they are doing from a digital transformation perspective. And one thing I find about metrics is, in fact, I have a whole list of things that people should not be doing from metrics, right? Where the syndrome that Jagdish just talked about is copying, and I call it as other person's metrics. It's like that manager is using this metric, so it is a metric that's going to work for me, or having a vanity metric to make you look good, right? So like Peter Drucker said, you are what you measure, right? You get results based on what you measure. Make sure you're measuring the right results,
Yeah, that's
right?
a good point.
The
Very good point.
right metric, because otherwise the results that you will get will be disastrous because you are measuring the wrong thing, right? And don't overuse metrics to just to feel vanity here. Choose the right metrics, and that will
Very good
change
point.
the behavior. That will steer the organization towards the right direction.
Very well said, Prasad. Thank you very much. This is really good. Metrics is a really important topic for me as well. Let me ask you a couple of questions on from the audience. And Prasad, why don't I start with you? These are related to small businesses, and the question from Rajay is that small businesses run on thin capex, and yet some of the things we talked about today seems like it is quite demanding on the investment side. Uh, and the question Raji asks is, cannot there be a cheaper solutions because we need to look at ROI? So I think maybe if I paraphrase that question, the question is, can I do more with less? And especially when I have not a lot very deep pockets to start with.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that Raji is asking the question about capex versus opex, one of my most favorite topics, right? If you think about the whole transformation that's happened in the industry, where we used to work with a lot of on-premise software, where you end up spending a lot of money on servers, on storage, on software licenses, database licenses, and other such capex related stuff. Now the model is more towards what you call as the opex model, where you are now buying software more like the way you're buying your utilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the order of magnitude from a cost perspective is a lot cheaper to work with an OpEx based model than with a CapEx based model. Plus, you have the flexibility of actually with a lot of these SaaS tools to actually now, if you don't like the tool at the end of the term, you can actually rip out the tool and replace it. Whereas if you have invested the capex, you are stuck with 3 years of depreciation or 4 years of depreciation, right? So for small emerging companies, I think rather than spending the money on capex spend, look at ways by which you can use opex spend, because it's not just the cost of the software. It is also the cost of the labor that you need to maintain your software, right? If you have a huge capex spend, you're going to need network engineers, you're going to need database analysts, you're going to need DBAs and other things, right? Whereas if you now put it on OpEx, this is a way by which you're removing all the perceived and the hidden costs. The hidden cost is the cost of labor, and you're now putting it on the SaaS vendor to actually take care of providing you the service, and they're taking over the burden. So I would say think about the whole OpEx model, the whole SaaS-based model is the way to go. And that's this COVID situation has accelerated our transition to SaaS also, anyways.
Thank you so much, Prasad. I do agree with you. Jagdish, let me ask you another question that Anupama has asked, and that's also related to small businesses. Prasad answered a part of that question around how do you store, manage, analyze, and transform data. But the question also is that how can you use the data, small business specifically, to turn the data into insights? And again, I think the intent of the question is that they may not have access to a lot of people, very specialized, who can actually do that, and that will also involve a lot of cost. So how can small businesses leverage some of the insights from the data they have without spending a whole lot of money?
So, Ravi, there are the reason why data exists is because it can drive insight. So, obviously, the first step for it is to collect the data, and I think that's a process that most people have realized, whether through various various statements like data is the new oil, etc., whatever else has been discussed. But from our perspective, the way for small businesses to leverage data insights is that there are a lot of SaaS platforms today. You don't need to deploy any infrastructure on your own or any sort of software license on your own. There are significant number of SaaS platforms which will pick data from your data repository, multiple sources. You'll make sure that they have a lot of other areas that they pick it up from, and will drive you to insights. So my recommendation to the small companies is that do not need to invest in putting together significant amount of money in buying IT infrastructure, IT solutions, or consultants. There are enough tools today, as even Prasad talked about, where you can plug in this, and you will get an insight pretty much which is worth it. The rest of it you can yourself drive value out. It will never be 100% customized to your liking, but it will do the 70-80% of the work. And my recommendation is, let's get 80% right and value out of it, then you can start to invest. Let that insight drive the investment cycle.
Yeah, there's a cycle. I agree. Perfect. This has been phenomenal. Jagdish, this is a topic we can talk for hours. But we are limited by time, and I think time is the most precious commodity that we have. At least I realized in the COVID world. Fantastic conversation, deep insights, and thank you so much for your generosity in sharing that. I'll pass it on to Bhavna and Saurabh
Thank you.
for taking it over.
Thank you so much, Ravi, Jagdish, and Prasad. Thank you for joining us and being a part of this incredible panel discussion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I just request our esteemed panelists to now stick back for the awards, which we're going to be now announcing for the next set. So firstly, ladies and gentlemen, now we're moving on to our next set of awards, and we're going to be starting with the most effective campaign. So could I have the screen to be displayed so that we can have everyone viewing in the award ceremony. So ladies and gentlemen, right now for the most effective campaign, and that goes to, let's see who the winner is, and that is Rapido. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause as we've got Rapido winning most effective campaign. So virtual applause going right there. So, ladies and gentlemen, Rapido's our vision is to make intra-city transportation convenient, affordable, and accessible in the country. With Rapido, we aim towards building an affordable commuting ecosystem in order to solve Indian mobility issue. So, ladies and gentlemen, now moving on to our next category, which is going to be displayed on your stage and screen right there, and that is the best enterprise product or service. And let's see who the winner is, and that is going to Servify. Congratulations, Servify, ladies and gentlemen. Virtual applause coming right there for the group Servify. So, ladies and gentlemen, Servify is in an India headquartered global company that provides warranty solutions to customers owning electronic devices in partnerships with leading brands comprising OEMs, carriers, retailers, and distributors. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with more fanfare coming in, let's see who the next category is. Moving on, could we have the next category, which is Best Tech for Retail? And let's see who the winner is. And that goes to Jaldi Cash. Congratulations, Jaldi Cash, with all the fanfare in the background, ladies and gentlemen, and the virtual applause coming right there to Jaldi Cash. Ladies and gentlemen, Jaldi Cash is all about payments made simple. Let's move on to the next category, ladies and gentlemen, and that is our next category, best use of machine learning. And let's see who that goes to. And the winner is Spoctor Solutions Private Limited. Congratulations to Spoctor Solutions Private Limited with all the fanfare and the background coming in. And smartest AI-based collection platform. Well, we're joined by our winner, Sumit Srivastava, joining us from the team of Spoctor Solutions Private Limited, live on the stage and screen. Sumit, congratulations. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Bhavna. Am I audible?
Yes, you are, Sumit.
Well, thank you so much, Bhavna, and the entrepreneur team for giving us the opportunity. I did follow the earlier discussion between Mr. Prasad, Ravi, and Jagdish. Very, very insightful, and it did remind me of my corporate journey before I turned an entrepreneur a few years ago. One liner of what we are trying to do: we are trying to create a parallel credit bureau score that helps enterprises and banks assess their collection capability, just like how a bureau score does at the time of underwriting. That's what we have charted the journey on. This entire thing would have been absolutely impossible without the 160 people who work in the organization. We are a Mumbai and an India headquartered team. We currently operate in 5 to 6 countries with a aspiration and dream to grow globally. So I think, Prasad, you rightly said that the transition of India from a QA to a cheap labor country to an innovation country, we will, as Spoctor, we will also have our small role to play in that. So again, thank you so much, entrepreneur team. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, and congratulations, Sumit, once again with Spoctor Solutions Private Limited getting the best use of machine learning. And ladies and gentlemen, for the final award, let's see our next category, which is, could we have the screen on and for all our audience? Ladies and gentlemen, for the final, which is the best use of technology for scalable solution. And that goes to, ladies and gentlemen, Mezan Gourmet Private Limited. Congratulations to the team of Mezan. And yes, that's what I was talking about, the fanfare right there. So, ladies and gentlemen, yes, with Mezan Gourmet Private Limited, it's all about redefining digital data intelligence era. So thank you and congratulations. And with this, I'd really like to congratulate all the winners. Thank you so much, Prasad, Ravi, and Jagdish, for giving us your valuable time for the panel discussion. It was truly insightful. Any thoughts towards the end? I just request, we've got 1 minute only. Ravi, if you'd just like to say any words of congratulations and encouragement to our winners. Ravi, Jagdish, and then Prasad. Over to you.
No, actually, Bhavna, first of all, huge congratulations. And, I'm reminded by, a quote of Michelangelo. He lived for 89 years in an era where the average age was 30 years, and he created a lot of important things. One of the quote he has is that largest danger for most of us is not that we aim high and we don't reach that, but that we aim low and that we reach it. So I just wanted to say
Absolutely.
that I think that way, and I think that's what we talked about today. So Jagdish and
Thank you.
Prasad, anything you want to
Yes,
add?
please.
Yeah, so
Jagdish.
congratulations. Yeah, go ahead, Jagdish.
Oh, okay. No, absolute brilliant that you guys have done this event, recognized the entrepreneurs, because we all recognize that at the end of the day, these are the people who will create the new digital world. This is the people who will challenge the existing focuses, and if at all, these are the people who will revolutionize the way we do things to the way we should be doing things for the future. So thank you for doing this, and congratulations to all the winners.
Thank you, Jagdish. Prasad, final words. Over to you.
Yeah, yeah. Congratulations to all the winners, and it's so nice to see so many budding companies in India right now. And Bhavna and the rest of the team, thank you for organizing this. Ravi and Jagdish, it was wonderful sharing this stage with you.
Thank you. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. With this, let's move on to the next session in the next few minutes. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.